Per usual, everything else channels for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It is set up Sunday. Let's take a look at some charts. And if you need me to help you trade, well, you probably shouldn't be trading in this environment. This is definitely throw a dart season. Everything lifting off, starting with ETH a couple days ago, which a lot of people caught and think they're a genius. So good for them. Happy for you. We'll take a look at ETH BTC, obviously. We'll take a look at some stuff on the legacy side to be watching for. But first here on Bitcoin, probably more importantly for alts than even ETH BTC is the parabolic potential here for BTC. I can't imagine it comes in Q3. If we see it, we probably see it in Q4. But we will probably start to see some early signs, maybe some consolidation. We have this 80K BTC seller who's selling into the market via Galaxy in the most piss poor way imaginable. So good for them. We also have the UK who has 7 billion in BTC potentially. They're talking about selling. That stuff usually takes a while to actually play out. We had record inflows in ETH ETFs last week, another 2 billion in Bitcoin ETFs last week. So we are definitely cooking. The only probably worrisome data point is the Coinbase rank in the App Store, which continues to creep up between 5 and 10. Generally, that has been a toppy sign, but after a week or so, and I can pull that chart up, if we're just looking at sentiment, fear and greed, it's just kind of whatever. We're certainly not there on price yet. And if we look at this Jungle Beat site, this bottom panel here, app rank, Google Trends, etc., it's barely a blip, and you can see historically we tend to run hot for quite a while. At least conservatively, I'm going to say at least a week or two minimum, but you can see the highlights here. So currently, highest crypto rank app in the finance category is 9, but Coinbase is up there. Anyway, a lot of just little stuff. I think funding is fine. And we're certainly not to the top of the power law, so my cold storage stays cold for now. Looking at the 3-day pitchfork, also in the medium term, we have plenty of room to run here from 130 to 150. That's the target based on the measured move of the falling wedge, based on the cup and handle, based on the inverted head and shoulders. That's the eventual target if and when we see it. Looking at the COT data on the future side on the bottom panel here, commercials got longer, so that is even more bullish than it was previously. I think this is a record net positioning now for commercials. And you get the general idea of this from October to December. I don't care what this is. I don't care if it's amount of precipitation in Istanbul, okay? If it backtests well, now the odds that would backtest well are basically zero, but if it backtests well and it's repeatable, then it's worth knowing. So we can hem and haw about what this is and what it represents. Is it the basis trade? Who are the commercials? Are they anything like anything else in futures? I don't care. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It just so happens that it lines up with expectations. So you can see commercials got long before the breakout. As the breakout extends, you see commercials get less long, and that's basically it. So we still have commercials very long, despite the sort of lackluster price action. And then the AI alt cloud, as in alternative cloud, not altcoin, giving you a flat Kumo there at 110. That would be the breakout retracement, basically. That would be my maximum bearish expectation for the week, is just giving it all back. All right, let's just say we don't see flows on the ETFs or the treasury companies, and there's extra FUD macro nonsense this week, and there's still another 20,000 BTC coins for sale from Galaxy, right? Whatever. We can make up a narrative on how we get to 110. I think it's going to be hard to keep us there, but these daily candles certainly don't look great. Now, this is the measured move. Again, 150 would be the level. We hit the yearly pivot. Now, you'll remember me saying this before the breakout. For whatever reason, we tend to find a level based on yearly pivots most of the time where stuff happens, and the stuff being 80,000 BTC coming to market. So here we are. Once we get past 122, I like 150 even better. We also have the 20-week moving average all the way down there at like 98K, 100 down there. That's your bull market support level. We look fine. Probably the most troubling near-term level is the trailing stop loss level there on the fractal at around 116. Any higher high at 120 would be an add. So do I like leverage here on BTC? I mean, I'm levered, but do I love it? No. Do I like it? No. But, just kind of eating it for a minute. eating it for a minute. This 4-hour chart doesn't look great. Doesn't look great. And the interesting thing is, of course, ETH BTC is lifting off. So that's also kind of hurting BTC in that if you're not moving, if you don't have momentum, if you don't have the juice today, right, you're dead. You're dead to the market. You're dead to the world. The world doesn't care about you, at least on the retail speculative leverage side. And no, the 80K hasn't been sold yet. It is being dripped into the market. And you can see that on chain. No, I will not provide links for that, but it is out there. You can find it. Looking at ETH and the commercials, same deal. They're long. They're not the longest they've ever been, but the positioning is how you'd want to see it. ETH, of course, in the stratosphere here. 3,800 to 4K is certainly the first pit stop. And as we'll find out on the daily, there's no fractals up here. There's no trailing stop loss levels, really. I assume 3K would be the level if we get angry, but it really depends on how much leverage gets washed out versus how much the ETFs buy versus how much the treasury companies buy. It's certainly been easier to be leveraged long ETH here. It's just, this is where people start to get into trouble because then they just keep going down the stack, right? They just keep rolling it more and more leverage down the pages, down to page 56 and then 69 and then 420 and then they're on page 500 and they don't know what the name of the coin is anymore. So I'd be careful with that. But yes, this looks good. I mean, what are you going to say, right? The measured move of this range is surpassed. So the measured move up here is the cup and handle. If that's the case, that's true, right? Again, you're getting a cloud level there at 3K-ish, but I don't see any reason to be concerned. RSI is certainly high. You know, I was watching a video and somebody's like, oh, RSI 70, be careful. I'm like, no, that's where you want it. You want RSI elevated. You don't want a bear div. You don't want RSI at 100. Okay, that is like a statistical oddity. So is it elevated? Is it high? Yeah. Is it go 50x long at this level? Not for me. So Godspeed if you do, but you want RSI elevated. But yeah, that's a little worrisome just how stretched that looks on RSI. 4 hour, there is a bear div. You can see we're getting successive higher highs here, getting increasingly parabolic. I wouldn't say we've gotten a parabolic blow off yet. That would be a massive wick. That would be a very angry candle on high volume. We haven't quite seen that yet. It's kind of been semi-orderly. You can generally see how this hastens. It just gets faster and faster and faster. So I'm assuming if we do get another leg, you know, I kind of thought we would consolidate around 35, 36, kept going. But if we do get another leg, then I would be very careful. It'd be interesting, do we stab like into 4,500, right? Just something silly. Completely possible the way this market is moving. And then I would watch for the bear div on the daily. But there are really no signs that I can see to close anything here other than RSI, which is quite high on the daily, and 4 hour divs, you know, that's iffy because you can see those all the time and just nothing materializes. But yeah, it's worth paying attention to 4, 6, 8 hour for sure. And of course, we're getting close to the ETH BTC target. ETH maxis don't want to hear this, but again, you have a high RSI. I'm not worried about that. I would love to see a bear div into the edge-to-edge target plus the fib target, right? Then you get all this confluence of, okay, it's time to move on with your life. Let this reconsolidate, just like the Pepe trade. If you remember, have a photographic memory like I do, what happened with that cloud, we shot straight to the top of the cloud in a couple days, and then we consolidated for like 2 months. And now we're back sort of at the 0.35, probably equivalent on ETH BTC, but that would be a Q4 move. So it's going to be interesting. Do we stop here at the expected TA targets soonish with a bear div and then reconsolidate for the rest of the summer and then go again in Q4? Because we're still, even on high time frames, we're not above a cloud yet, right? This is the 3-day, but certainly on the daily we're above. On the weekly, we're definitely not. And everybody's celebrating a mean reversion, right? That's what this is. That's how down bad ETH has been. And of course, a lot of this other stuff down the stack, ENA, anything that's ETH beta, Link, any ETH meme coin, aside from Pepe, doing very well. The tough part here is how bearish can BTC get without ETH pulling back, without the rest of the market down the stack pulling back, right? Because you just know there are lots and lots of people and lots of money very leveraged on alts right now. And that's okay, that's fine. But what's going to really give us our -25, -50% days are people who are too leveraged. I don't think that's quite the case here. I think we're getting close, but I don't think we're quite there on the danger zone. Maybe next week. But some of this stuff still has plenty to go on targets. Any chart you can think of basically looks like this or close to this. There really isn't much of anything other than maybe TIA that is still underperforming. Here's Pepe. And at this point, you have to choose, do you want to trade ETH when it looks like this, when the target's here, or do you want to trade ENA when the target's here and the breakout is certainly a few days behind you, or do you like stuff like this, Pepe, WIF, even Aptos, which we'll get to, which hasn't broken out yet, is pre-breakout above the cloud. Good things happen above the cloud, and this is, the Pepe cloud, right? ETH BTC equivalent would be breaking out again after consolidating into Q4. So this still looks okay. This looks pre-breakout. My assumption here is that if ETH does break the 4, then you're going to start to see some people rotating more aggressively into stuff like this. So how much of a market timer do you want to be is the question. Here's Sol. Looks okay. Looks fine. Good things happen above the cloud. Most of these charts have a massive W at this point. This could fail. All of these Ws could fail here. Form an ascending triangle again into Q4. Not my base assumption, but something to watch for if this 180 range, for example, again, it doesn't matter what the chart is, but you can clearly see a horizontal level there at 180-ish. Whatever the equivalent is on the other charts, those will be the key levels, right? If this, then that. If we break out, I like higher highs. If we fail to break out and the groundhog sees its shadow, it's a couple more months of winter. We try again in Q4, that sort of thing. But I think you have to expect bullish continuation for most of these charts. This is Sol ETH. It has been 15 days now, I think, maybe more, of straight red candles, RSI at levels not seen since FTX blew up. You don't have a bull div here. It is pretty oversold. I wouldn't catch this knife just yet, IMO, if you're swapping from ETH, because that's the question, right? Did you rotate from BTC to ETH in your trading stack? And now a lot of people are getting nervous. What do I do? What do I do with ETH? Do I sell it? Do I buy other stuff? Do I hold it? Do I add? This isn't screaming to me, rotate out of ETH into Sol, right? You want to see a div, you want to see a pattern, you want to see something here on the daily specifically, which you're not quite seeing yet. On the 8 hour, there is a div. You're getting successive lower lows on less momentum. So on lower time frames, it's just starting to try to bottom, but it did have a div back here. You got a series of lower lows on higher RSI, and it just failed to break out, just went nowhere, right? Even had a pattern. So I would certainly be patient on that and wait for a signal, not financial advice. This is WIF, looks better than Pepe to me. Probably put it head to head, but some of these may not need their base chain, their own layer 1 to break out. This looks quite good and quite ready to me. Target probably 2 before it decides to pull back a little bit, but looks great. Can't knock it. And then here's Aptos. This one's probably one of the few, I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments, others that look similar to this, but market cap wise, whatever that means, it is probably the highest market cap that hasn't broken out yet. So it's right there. You're going to get a twist. You're going to get a Kuma breakout probably on the same day. And you certainly have a diagonal trend line to watch that looks to be broken at this point. So, if you're looking for stuff, what hasn't moved yet, this is certainly an option. But again, you just have to be careful. Does this break out before or after ETH and BTC pull back, if they do pull back? And then you've got other moonshot stuff like this, ancient coins like LTC, which historically, when things get silly, go for 400 in this case. That's roughly a 4x from here, roughly. So depending on your time horizon, depending on how long you want to play this stuff, if you think the cycle has at least another 100 days, and you think the cycle can get crazier, there is some longer term stuff that you can think about, maybe buying a dip, maybe holding longer than a day, right? Holding this into Q4 with the assumption that you're going to get a big move there. MSTR has been kind of a disappointment. Its bullishness kept me out of going longer on ETH, which, hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But this did pull back, I guess, on not getting included in SPX news. Who thought it was going to get included is my question. They're going to try to keep this thing out of the S&P as long as they can. In any event, it's still above the breakout point there at 420. You probably don't want this to go much below 400 if it does pull back. And in hindsight, for the rest of July, maybe into August, we get a move higher, but we're kind of running against the clock here, right? Because if July was supposed to be bullish, which it has been, and MSTR is underperforming, does this just languish until early Q4, much like it did last year? Last year it started to break before everything else bottomed even. So be careful with this one in the near term, just because it hasn't broken out as expected yet. Maybe this is MNAV games being played with Chanos and others shorting. Maybe that's playing a part of it. Maybe the MSTY stuff is dampening volatility. Maybe the treasury company competition is dampening volatility or dampening breakout potential. There's all sorts of reasons. Still looks plenty bullish though. Still looks good to go at some point this year. Coin similar to ETH also looks bullish, ready to go, right? It's just a question of, okay, is now the time? Is this the breakout? Is it going to retrace a little bit? Are you going to get a better buy later? Does it really matter if you think this is going to 800, 600, whatever? That's still a decent move left. The market timer in me is saying, okay, maybe give it a week, see what happens this week, maybe next week, maybe buy closer to 330 if you want to get in. But in the grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter too much. But if I'm thinking of like 4D chess here, if BTC pulls back, what do I want to look to buy? Like, what do you want to get ready to buy? This might be on that list, just because if you are a believer in this pattern breaking out, this megaphone breaking higher, then that's still a great trade for the remainder of the year. Then some other legacy ideas real quick that we picked up from the stream. Archer Aviation looks great. IHS, Rocket Lab, also reaching its target. This is like the BTC 150 equivalent up here. Chart looks very similar. Again, looks very similar to ACHR. You've got Galaxy with a inverted head and shoulders as well. Looks very similar. So anything that looks like this is totally great in my book. I'm all about it. Anything that looks like Oklo, which we'll get to in a second, cup and handle, inverted head and shoulders, ascending triangle, anything that looks like that in this market should lead to bullish continuation. Looking at the S&P, this is futures, certainly slowing down. I'm not as bearish maybe as most people are. Looking at positioning here, it is decently positioned for the long side. Again, you've got commercials, net long, speculators short. TKC clamps just starting to form, level probably like 5,900. Do you really want to be max long S&P up here? I don't know, probably not, but it looks plenty fine for continuation. What looks worse on positioning is the NASDAQ tech. Now this, just look at this, the commercial picture here on positioning. It's been net short for a very, very long time. So it may just be a challenging environment for NASDAQ to continue higher relative to everything else. And of course, Russell is the opposite of that. You're getting, again, commercials max long. And from a relative value perspective, tech versus zombie companies win here based on positioning, based on being not as stretched. And they've even had a massively bullish run since that April low. And then you've, of course, got the commodities, which I don't have a million charts for commodities, but in aggregate, you really can't go wrong here. Some people like silver, some people like gold, some people like platinum, palladium, whatever. Again, it's like the altcoin stuff. It is commodity season. Probably some sort of commodity super cycle to some degree is reigniting here. And this is just a rare earth strategic metal ETF. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's breaking out on technicals. That's why I like it. And this is a multi-year breakout, similar to ETH-BTC. Here's Oklo again, and that similar theme. AI, data center, utility, nuclear, uranium, rare earth, all this stuff feeding the future technologies. Sure, right? I just like the tech mainly, but yeah, all that other stuff's pretty exciting too. A very large percentage move. It is hard to recover from a move February to April like this. To recover, have another mini drawdown and recover again. This is textbook cup and handle stuff in my book. And here's XLU, which is making new all-time highs there. Still plenty of room for more. And I'm sure if you look into this ETF, there's specific charts that maybe look better than others. But for me, this is good enough. And it's a nice little defensive play, hedge against the craziness I'm currently trading. And then lastly here on Quantum, looking at the group, none of these look bad. All these look like they're ready to go at all-time highs. This Rigetti chart is how I thought MSTR would look. I mean, this is basically the MSTR chart. You haven't had your breakout yet on MSTR. This IONQ chart is cup and handle, inverted head and shoulder, right? All these are sort of the same. QBTS a little bit different, but collectively, there's a lot of bullish correlation here. So when you can grab something that hasn't moved yet, that has a lot of potential on a relative basis, that's where you're going to do the best if you feel like you need to find the fastest horse every day. It's very hard right now on the risk side to not be doing well. That's all I have for this one. Give me a like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.